Greetings. I am Dalek Dave. I am here to issue a warning that this video contains different opinions. If you do not like different opinions, leave now. Failure to comply will result in maximum extermination. Exterminate! Exterminate! Exterminate!
With more and more news coming out about Series 12, I thought it would be interesting to detail why I believe, personally, that Series 12 will be a failure. Now, please bear in mind that these are just my own opinions, and if that triggers you, then don't watch the rest, I suppose. But these are just some things that I've noted. I've got my notes right here. So, with that said, let's get on with the list. Number 1. Recycling old ideas. One of the things that was marketed heavily with Series 11 was the exclusion of classic villains or any real classic things from either the modern era or the classic era. However, one of the first announcements we had for Series 12 was the reintroduction of the Jodie. And this was a midnight announcement made by the Doctor Who Twitter page. Now, the thing that concerns me about this is that, well, I said it in the podcast the other day, would the Jodie coming back really be a big deal, say, 5-6 years ago? So let's say, in this hypothetical scenario, if Moffat was the showrunner and he brought back the Jodie for an episode, do you think that there would be a midnight announcement about it? I would say no. And do you want to know the reason for that? It's because they didn't have to hype up the Jodie. The Jodie aren't even that big of a villain. Instead, they're just kind of a secondary thing. They're not something that you would base a plot off of. They're sort of secondary to whatever else is going on. Like in Smith and Jones, they're not the main antagonists, they're just kind of the policemen. Same in Sarah Jane episode that featured one. They weren't really considered to be a big threat. But the fact that this was hyped so heavily by Doctor Who tells me that they really haven't got that much interesting material to go with. So they're basically just trying to get fans as excited as possible for something that really isn't worth the hype. I would recommend Bullstreck's videos called Doctor Who Gets Desperate, as I think that's a perfect way to describe it. Doctor Who is desperate, because obviously, if the series had a lot to offer, then they wouldn't be hyping up something so small as the Jodie. But that's not the only thing that we've heard about recycling old ideas. Apparently, according to recent news reports, this series is going to be more like the Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat eras. I don't know how true that is, but if that is true, then it just shows you that Chibnall feels kind of defeated. And obviously his plan to introduce all these new things didn't work, which would prove many fans, myself included, correct. That what he tried to do with the show didn't work and was a poor experiment, essentially. We did see the Dalek in Resolution, but that also kind of concerns me, because the way the Dalek was reintroduced was kind of poor. The whole idea of the whole plot of that episode, the fact that there was knights taking down a Dalek was ridiculous. The fact it was made out of Sheffield steel, it was just a poor reintroduction for Doctor Who's most classic and iconic villain. And I think the ratings reflect that, being the lowest rated special of all time. And I don't care what people say, there's no way of disputing that. Resolution was the lowest rated special of all time, period. There's nothing you can say to that. In terms of New Who, it was the lowest rated special. And I just worry what Chibnall's going to do with these other classic villains. I mean, imagine if he brings back the Cybermen, and they're made out of Sheffield steel. I can honestly see it happening. Or they're not being able... No, it'd be even better. They won't be allowed to be called Cybermen. They'll be called Cybermams or something, I don't know. I just worry for the rest of the show's villains, judging by what he did with the Cybermen. Next thing I got on my list, number 2. Having the same political plot lines as in Series 11. One of the recent announcements I saw was the fact that an episode was going to be centered around a French resistance fighter, I believe, who fought in World War II, who was, an activist and for women's rights and stuff. And you could just see what Chibnall's going to try and do in this episode. He's going to try and have men be the villain, and this one woman is going to be the hero, and everything that she says is going to be correct. She's basically going to be the Mary Sue, other than the Doctor. And I suppose Yaz, because... Well, no, I wouldn't call Yaz a Mary Sue, because she's not really powerful, but anyway. You can see what he's going to try and do. He's going to try and make her this untouchable, amazing superhero, whilst all the men in the episode are going to be fools who bend to her will, essentially. And to be honest, I'm just not looking forward to seeing that. I don't know much about the historical figure, not as much as I knew about Rosa Parks. But judging by what he did with Rosa, I'm not excited for this at all. That's all I have to really say on that announcement. I'm sure it'll be plenty of politics be injected into that episode. And we're all going to be lectured to for a good 50 minutes. The next thing I have on my list, Chibnall will probably write most of the episodes. Now, we saw this with Series 11. Chibnall wrote far more than half of the episodes. He wrote episodes 1 to 5, he wrote episode 10 and 11. So in total, he wrote 7 episodes. 7 episodes is quite a lot for an 11 episode run, if you include the special, obviously. And that concerns me because, unfortunately, much of the best work from Series 11 came from writers that weren't Chibnall. Obviously, many people like to cite Kablam as the best episode, which I can kind of see why. I personally prefer Resolution just because it's so stupid that it's almost funny in that sort of it's so bad it's good way. But it's kind of concerning that the showrunner was the one who penned all the worst episodes. So, the idea of him writing more episodes doesn't excite me. And I can't really think of anything that he can do in, like, a story to make it interesting, to make me interested. Because judging by his previous works, not only in Series 11, but in previous series, he's just not that interesting of a writer. So I'm not looking forward to seeing what piss-poor stories he comes up with, honestly. And we might get some more legacy writers. Hopefully, we'll get some legacy writers to maybe crack out 1 or 2 good episodes through this period of darkness. Maybe we'll get, maybe RTD will come back and pen an episode. Maybe Toby Whithouse. Anybody, really. I'm not asking for much, I just need somebody somebody decent to come and write an episode, because we got writers in Series 11, the ones who weren't Chibnall never wrote Doctor Who before. And it showed, quite honestly. Now, I understand that you don't have to have written for sci-fi before to write good sci-fi, but when you're trying to introduce a new era, surely you would want the strongest writers possible, wouldn't you? I would imagine you would. So you wouldn't pick these total newbies who've never written an episode before. So why did Chibnall do that? Well, it's kind of obvious to me and you, isn't it? It was to do with the virtue signalling, because if you look at the writing staff for Series 11, they're all very diverse. They all tick a box, which is exactly what Chibnall was trying to do. Number 4, it'll be returning to Saturdays. Now, I think the return to Saturdays is kind of symbolic that the Sunday night slot didn't work. Because if the Sunday night slot had worked, as the BBC and Chibnall had hoped it to, then it would be staying there. But it's not. But it's moving back to a Saturday, which is where it was prior to Series 11. Now, the worrying part about that is that in Britain, Saturday night is a very competitive time for broadcasting. It's when the networks all bring out their biggest shows. So I feel like maybe the show's ratings will be even lower than they were in Series 11, based on the fact that they've got a lot more to compete with on a Saturday night, as opposed to a Sunday night, which has always been a relatively quiet night for entertainment. So there's that. I personally don't mind too much what days the show's on, but I feel that the return to the Saturday night could be detrimental, considering how competitive of a night it is. And we saw this with previous eras, it didn't do too well on a Saturday night. And Series 11 is pulling in those sort of views on a Sunday night. So imagine how low the ratings are going to be on a more competitive night. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the ratings are likely going to be lower than what they were in Series 11 on Sunday night. The final point I've got written down is that Jodie Whittaker will still be the Doctor, and Chris Chibnall's still going to be showrunner. Now, I know this is going to make me sound like the sexist bigot that everyone likes to portray me as, but I don't think Jodie Whittaker's the right fit. I've said this in numerous videos. Even if you got the most talented writers in Doctor Who history, let's say, who could we get? Let's say we get Hinchcliffe and Holmes to write the 13th Doctor. I still don't think that Whittaker would be able to carry a good performance. I just don't think she's capable of it. She could prove me wrong in Series 12. I'm not entirely ruling that out, but chances are she's going to be very much the same. And Chibnall's still going to be writing her the majority of the time. So she's likely going to remain that one-dimensional, bland piece of bread that she was in Series 11. Well, it wasn't even a piece of bread, it was an irritating piece of bread. Like a piece of bread with a hole in it. But at least then I suppose it has a purpose, like, you can eat it still. But with Jodie, she doesn't even have the purpose. She doesn't even have a purpose. I'm getting off topic here. Point is, Jodie Whittaker will still be the Doctor, and Chris Chibnall will still be showrunner. And as we've seen, that's not a good thing. Chris Chibnall is showrunner. We said this in the podcast again. Go and watch my podcast with Harry's Moving Castle if you missed it. He is like the most boring part of the zoo. With all the animals you've already seen a million times, they're all asleep and they're not doing anything. That's what Chibnall's era signifies. And I don't personally want to sit through a bunch more boring episodes. I'm going to have to because I want to review them. Not just for views or anything like that, because, to be honest, the Series 11 reviews I did never got that high ratings, but honestly, just because I'm a box set guy, I still need to review Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos at some point. But that's kind of concerning that Chibnall's still a showrunner. And I know that people are saying, oh, it was only his first series, you gotta give him time. But as I've said before, Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat were able to give you a good indication of their eras in their first episode. Chibnall still hasn't been able to do that 11 episodes in. I still don't know what Chibnall's trying to do with the show. Is he trying to make it more lighthearted, more serious? I don't know. Is he trying to focus it more on characters? Well, clearly not, because the majority of them aren't really developed or developing, other than maybe Graham and Ryan. And that's only because Grace has died. Once the Grace death plotline is gone, you know, what else are their characters going to do? We've heard rumours that Yaz is going to get more characterization in Series 12. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped the boat and did the whole Thasmin thing. Ship the Doctor and Yaz. I never liked the Doctor really having romantic relationships, whether it be straight or otherwise, to be honest. I always saw the Doctor as a sort of grandfather-esque figure, so the idea of him having space dates with young girls, I think when the series started, Rose was 19. Let that sink in a minute. You know, a 900-year-old was going out with a 19-year-old. Like, I don't want to creep anybody out, but when you think about it that way, it's kind of, you know. And Jodie's supposed to be like 3,000 years old, and she's going out with, well, she may well be going out with somebody who's in her 20s. It just never sat well with me. The whole meta crisis thing, I feel like they could get away with, because at least then they were both human, so they both grew old together, and they were both about the same age. And same with River Song, that's okay because they're both Time Lords, but in the case of the Doctor and Yaz and the Doctor and Rose, I personally never saw the appeal to that. And then they tried to do it with Martha as well, and that was just sort of a rebound type of situation. But yeah, those are all the things that I had listed. Be sure to list some of your things below. Honestly, I feel like this is just going to crash and burn. It feels like they're trying to do some course correction, but I feel like at this point, it's a little too too late. I mean, I hope that it improves. I never go into a series saying, oh, I want this to be terrible. Because why would I want to watch terrible television? You just don't go into television wanting that. But in the case of Series 11, I can't help thinking that... Series 12, rather. I can't help thinking that it's just going to be another misfire from Chibnall. And he could end up leaving, which I'll be happy to see. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment down below your thoughts on Series 12, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and have a good day, everybody.